Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
And it's not Michael, it's a better looking pair this week. It's myself, Regan Stevenson, and James E, who does Indie Live Radio. Thank you for joining me, James.
It's an absolute pleasure to be on the Locker Room with yourself, Regan.
Cheers, and I hope Michael's enjoying his night, but you've got the two better looking guys tonight.
Well, we can do without part-time presenters, do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Michael likes to think he's the host, but he's only here part-time, you know what I mean? That's why he puts me on big wages, you know?
You're getting paid for this. Nobody told me I would get paid.
So, first of all, James, the big news from the last 20 minutes or so was the SFA have come out and apologised to Hearts. I don't know if you've seen it. They've come out and they've apologised to Hearts. They say that they should have been awarded a penalty in the 3-1 defeat to Rangers.
Right. That's interesting. But of course, there's nothing really going to happen with that. It's fine coming out and saying, "Oh, look, we're really sorry, but we made a terrible mistake." What would be far better would be if they could go back and play the game again, for instance, you know, or give them a share of the points. Do you know what I mean? But just to say, "Oh, look, we made a mistake," tough. Nah, I don't like that, you know. The game's over and done with, so fair enough. Yeah, it's good that they've accepted responsibility for an error, but really it doesn't help Hearts in terms of where they are on the table.
No, and I'm totally glad that since I've got the new referee in last summer, James, we've got the transparency, but I just feel a bit sorry for Wally in terms of every single week. He's now being able to come out and apologise every single week. And as much as I like that, James, I would also like there to be this stop apologising every week, because it's okay apologising to like you say, to Hearts, but you're apologising to Dundee, to Kilmarnock, to Celtic. It's a different club every game. So yeah. VR, it might solve a few problems, but it definitely doesn't solve every problem.
Yeah, no. I mean, as you say, there are so many mistakes get made with VAR in different games every week that, as you say, he's coming out and he's constantly apologising for this, that and the next thing. I did hear something recently, I think it was Chris Sutton that had said it, about what they should do is make it a full-time position, you know, like the referees as well, you know, so that's their job. They don't have a day job and then they turn up, you know, a couple of times a week to be a referee or a linesman or a VAR, you know, a host or whatever.
Yep, and then, so James, just moving away from the football, Michael's been busy this week. He spoke to a journalist about this Scotland versus England match that this week in the rugby. So we'll go on to that soon as well. But I think we'll move on to this weekend's fixtures. And here they are. Celtic go away to Easter Road at 12:30 tomorrow. Then Rangers play St Mirren. Aberdeen play Kilmarnock. Dundee United play a new manager, Motherwell, and Ross County faced Dundee. And then on Sunday at midday, we've got St Johnstone against Hearts.
Yeah, all very tasty ties, if you ask me. You know, as a Celtic supporter, I used to always love going through to Edinburgh for the Hibs and the Hearts games, you know, because there was always a terrific atmosphere at them. And even though there's a kind of bar, if you like, on the numbers of away supporters, you still kind of get that buzz from it a wee bit, you know.
Yeah, and there's our first comment from Graham. Obviously, me and James were just talking about that there. Graham, I don't know if you heard us in the first 2 minutes. but we spoke about the SFA making a statement in regards to that. Yeah, I think it is a bit of a disgrace that every single week they're coming out saying they apologise for it. It should have been a penalty to Hearts.
I love his comment there at the end. It was an error. Stevie Wonder could see that's a penalty. Dear, I must admit, I do follow the Gorgie Boys podcast, even though I'm not a Hearts fan. But I do follow it because obviously we know Graham. But there's always something in it, that even I find to be of interest. The fact that I'm not a Hearts supporter.
Aye, and James come back in and says, where do the officials get held accountable? And I think that's a good point that he makes in terms of, like, maybe now it is, James, that maybe these referees maybe get took off for a week. But then if you speak to, like, somebody like Des Roach, who we have on the show pretty often, he talks about there not being a lot of referees. So that then means that if you don't have referees refereeing the matches, then you've got no football games.
Yeah, aye, and I've also seen people saying stuff like, this referee or that referee shouldn't be allowed to referee these particular games, and the same thing would apply really. Then you would run out of referees quite quickly. I know they're meant to be completely unbiased, and let's be honest, if they're football supporters, fans in any way, shape, or form, they're going to have a favourite side. And if they're drawn against a game again for that side, it's going to be difficult for them to remain impartial. So possibly, there is a good point to that argument of not allowing them to referee those games, but you would need to have a hell of a lot more referees.
Yeah, and obviously, we'll move on to speak about football now, and I just want to get your thoughts on Tuesday night, Celtic away at Bayern, James, because generally speaking, I thought Celtic were going to get beat and beat pretty well because Bayern are like 6 times champions of Europe. They're playing really good football at the moment. They're about 8 or 9 points clear in the German league. But I mean, fair play to Celtic. They played really well.
They were absolutely excellent over the course of the 90 minutes. I personally felt that the best we could get out of the game would be a draw, be that 0-0 or 1-1, as it ultimately ended. I didn't really think that they would beat Bayern Munich, although when I was watching the game on Tuesday night, and obviously it was getting towards the sort of end of the first 90 minutes, I was thinking to myself, well, do you know what? If they take them into the extra time, the way that they're playing, there's every possibility they might pull it off. But then, of course, we all know what happened.
Yeah, and obviously, like, if you look at Celtic, I think they made big strides in Europe this season, James.
Oh, they have done, absolutely. If you think just back, even if we go back to Brendan Rodgers' first spell as manager at Celtic, they took some hefty defeats in Europe, and really, apart from the Dortmund game, every single game that they've played, they've been a really good team, and they've been difficult to beat. Your mic's gone off.
Yeah, I mean, James, if you look at Celtic as well, I mean, they've been fantastic in Europe this season. They go away to Atalanta, they go away and they do well against Villa as well. So they've shown in Europe they can go away now.
Yeah, and I think, the likes of Aston Villa and certainly Bayern Munich from Tuesday night, they probably got a big fright when they played Celtic, that they maybe didn't think that they would perform as well as they did. And I think to a certain degree, maybe some of the Bayern players, and some of them have actually said this, after the first match, they felt that there was no competition there for them. And I was glad to see the other day that apparently Neuer, the goalkeeper, had said that the Bayern were the better team on Tuesday night, but some head honcho at Bayern Munich had actually slapped him down verbally and said to him, you're talking rubbish. Celtic were the better side. And your mic's gone again.
Yeah, I was just going to say, James, obviously, Celtic as well, they're playing really well at the moment. I don't think Brendan Rodgers and the players can really really be too hard on themselves?
No, as I say, I mean, it was Callum McGregor, wasn't it? After the game, he was being interviewed after the game, and he was kind of like, "When's the next European game?" You know, the boys are all fired up for it. We're really looking forward to going there. But of course, next season they're going to have to play a qualifier to get into the Champions League proper.
Aye, and I think that's where Brendan Rodgers holds that power now in terms of saying to the board, look, this is what we can do in Europe. So as
Yeah.
much as Scottish football might be great, and we talk about it every single week, but if Celtic can do well in Europe, that can only benefit Scottish football as well.
Absolutely, and I mean when both Celtic and Rangers were doing particularly well in European competition, the national team were doing very well. The coefficient for Scotland, rose steadily, put them in very good positions, and it's only because in the last couple of years, the results from the national team and also from Celtic and Rangers in Europe have kind of pegged all that back. What I would love to see happening is the other teams in Scotland that get into Europe getting past like that first game or that second game, and getting into the actual group stages of the competitions other than Celtic or Rangers.
I think that's spot on, James, because I think in terms of Aberdeen and that, Aberdeen did a great start to the season, but if they can get a good draw, then they can surely make it into the playoff and then even go to the Conference League at worst, because you've seen Hearts done well this season, but saying that, Graham will know as well, James, that the Hearts kind of faltered at the very last hurdle against that Petrofact, who were probably the worst team in the competition.
Yeah, I think as well part of the problem for the other teams in Scotland is obviously the budgets that they have for bringing in players. Not so much Rangers really at this point in time, but from a Celtic perspective, Celtic could go out tomorrow and spend another 11 million plus on a player. Without really thinking about it. Hearts, Aberdeen and that, they have to call a wee bit more canny, as we used to say, when they're going into the transfer market and try and find those gems for relatively small, fees. But they then have to hold on to them. If they get some good players and they have a great first season with the club and they get them into Europe, they have to be able to build on that. And that's the secret, building on that European success on an ongoing basis, as Brendan Rodgers keeps saying.
Aye. And I think that can only attract players to Celtic as well, because if Celtic are going, say they go in the market for a striker in the summer because they've still no replace Kyogo, they can say, right, well, if you come to Celtic, you'll be able to go up against RB Leipzig and beat them. We can go up against Atalanta and draw with them. Atalanta, who are top of Serie A and playing well at the moment. So I think Celtic have got a real bargaining tool, because I've got no doubt, James, that I think Celtic will sell a few players this summer. Probably Rio Hatate, because he's been there a long time now. And probably Nicholas, because he scored that goal, because that'll probably add an extra few million onto his price tag as well.
Well, I mean, obviously there's been quite a lot of talk about Nick Kuhn over the last week or so, and I've seen various figures being bandied about, for him to be sold, but the general consensus seems to be that it'll be around about 25 million. I think they could probably get more than that for him. And they've been talking about teams like Newcastle, being interested in him. I saw Leeds United being linked with him as well. My personal opinion is, don't go to Leeds United. You want to go to a team in the Premier League, or you want to go back into mainland Europe.
Yeah, James, obviously, but before we get into detail about talking about the fixtures before we go into it, obviously the story broke yesterday that Rangers potentially could be looking at new investment. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I've been following it today. I've seen various bits and bobs when I've been on the internet about this potential investment, and it will be good for them. But there's more problems at Rangers than just somebody putting money into the club to resolve. There's a lot of other things that need to be resolved there before in terms of players and stuff like that.
Yeah, and obviously it's great to be joined by Alistair. Thank you for joining me, Alistair.
I'm sorry I'm late, folks. I've only just picked up the tail end of what you're saying. It's interesting because the reason I'm late, I've just been writing an article for my accountants about the R&D tax credits problem in Scottish football. So I don't know whether you've covered that or not, but it's probably pertinent to what you've just been talking about. So
Not yet, but on you go.
okay, well, do you know about this?
Not
no.
too much detail, but a few.
Okay, it's been reported in the last couple of days. Essentially, research and development tax credits, any company that is making an advance to the greater good by investing in research and development technology, can claim back that money or have it offset against tax by HMRC, right? Now, Dundee United, Hibs and Rangers are the three Scottish clubs. There's 28 in total identified by the Times. But you're looking at, in the case of Dundee United, I looked at the stats, and both they and Hibs have claimed over £1 million in these things in the last couple of years. So Dundee United are being pursued by HMRC for 600 grand. Bear in mind, this is a club that's just had two sets of results with 7-figure losses. Hibs have just had a 7-figure loss, 7 million loss in the last set of figures. They're possibly on the hook for the same amount of money as again. Rangers, it's £750,000. So, again, potentially on the hook for hundreds of thousands of pounds getting out of the club because HMRC will want it back. And my accountants are genuine tax specialists. They're CTAs, not CAs, and they're also experts in this field. And they're astonished that any football club could actually get away with it, because essentially you're saying you're doing something which is research and development into new technology for the greater good. Can't see it happening. So
So we're talking about
that's why I'm late, but that's a very long-winded way of saying that Rangers and Hibs and Dundee United potentially have other financial problems. Never mind Rangers being bought,
Are we talking about a potential punishment for these clubs, Alistair?
Yeah, HMRC will want the money back. If they'll probably, I guess it would go to court. I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, but I would guess if HMRC come and say, look, we want 600 grand, you can either fight it, which will cost you an awful lot of money, and you'll take the advice from the lawyers, do we fight this? And if you lose it, then of course you're on the hook for the cost of the lawyers, which, as we know, are astronomical. So it all comes down to money. So that was a very long-winded way of explaining why I'm late, and it's another example of how football clubs are just businesses. Sorry, folks.
I was just going to ask you, Alistair, then, see these talks about Rangers and the 49ers then?
Yeah.
Do you see them being a kind of a feeder club? Or do you see them kind of focusing on European football? Because even if Rangers finish second, they're still going to be in Europe every single season.
It's a very good question, Reagan. I mean, I think, sorry, it sounds like an accountant again, but it does come back to tax and things. Why do the 49ers want to buy anybody? Presumably, and again, I'm not an accountant, but presumably that purchase will help. They can offset that against their tax bill. So there's a method in that kind of madness. If I was a Rangers fan, I would look at it and go, depending on what kind of Rangers, if I was a traditionalist, I'd look at it and go, well, I really want my club to be, owned by Scottish people. This is one of the most famous clubs in Scotland. We don't want to be owned by, we don't want to be part of a much, much bigger organisation alongside Leeds and all the rest of it. And as you say, Reagan, potentially just a feeder club for the Premier League, the Premier Division, if Leeds get promoted, which it looks like they might. Because let's be honest, just now, Scottish football is not at the same level as the Premiership in England.
Because it was, as much as it may be great news for Scottish football and Rangers and that, I wouldn't say there's really a lot of money to be made in Scottish football, because if you look at it in general, Rangers are still finishing second at the moment, and I don't think these guys are coming in to really change much. I think what they'll be trying to do is trying to make more money in terms of making Rangers more dominant in Scottish football, and then try to make a mark in Europe.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, you look at the amount of money Celtic are raking in just now. I mean, and it's astronomically more than Rangers are going to have. So unless these guys are going to come in and pump in lots and lots of money, and we just talked about they may end up with a bill for the tax credits. They've obviously got a huge loss. Ibrox will be costing a lot of money. It's a big stadium. There's a lot of money in running a big stadium like Ibrox or Celtic Park or Hampden. They've got the support. They haven't been winning an awful lot recently. I genuinely don't know the answer, Regan, but if I was an American owner, why do you want to buy Rangers? That's the question any football fan would want to ask. If you've got Americans wanting to buy your club, why is that? Now, I've just been through that with my club. Why on earth does an American want to buy St. Johnstone? Seriously.
I think the other thing as well, of course, is you've also got that financial fair play situation from, the European footballing bodies. Whereby they're only allowed to say spend a certain percentage on new players, so they couldn't come in, for instance, say and invest 60 million quid into the club and then spend say another 20 or 30 million on players, because they're probably going to run foul of the fair play rules as well.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure how that works. I don't know whether you gents do or not. I mean, obviously in England, they've got one specific set of regulations, so I don't genuinely know how that applies in Scotland, so I'm not sure we've got enough money to actually get on the radar. Whereas in England, clearly you've got the Man City situation, which is still waiting to be resolved.
See, the big example for me was, right, Newcastle got bought over last year by Saudi owners, but if you look at Newcastle, I mean, there was Newcastle fans that were partying in the street and all that sort of stuff. But now, if you ask a Newcastle fan, I don't think they've really spent that much amount of money because as James says, they can have PSR rules to call it.
Yeah.
They're not able to spend a lot of money.
It's all about balancing the books, So if you sell, for talking, say you sell two players for 30 million quid. Right, and then you buy somebody in and you spend £100 million on them, you're going to fall foul of the FIFA fair play rules, because you've spent more money on an incoming player, than you've got coming in from selling two other players, and that's where the sort of disparity comes from. The rule is pretty much the same across Europe. Down in England in the Premier League, they have a sort of separate set of rules that they've installed as well as the UEFA ones. So, and I think it's the Premier League ones that Manchester City fell foul of, apparently.
Yeah. One thing I can definitely tell you is that I know the football authorities are looking at the fit and proper person test. And I think they're going to look at, now it's already above what the legal requirement is, but I understand that they're maybe going to look to try and strengthen that further. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that the 49ers are going to, not tick all the boxes. You presume not. But that, again, is interesting because we've obviously had Dumbarton, we've had Inverness. And this is not just about Rangers and Celtic. It's about all of Scottish football.
Mm. Yeah.
Now we should probably move on to some football matters.
That's probably my fault for coming in with all that nonsense. Tax credits, So
the Rangers have been drawn against Fenerbahce of Turkey for the round of 16. I don't know what you guys make of that, but it's a bit of a box office tie because Jose Mourinho will be in Scotland again.
Yeah, I think it's a good draw. And the way Rangers have been playing in Europe at home, they could probably take anybody on without any sort of fear. But when you go over there to Istanbul, the atmosphere is, I mean, we talk about the atmospheres here at, Celtic Park and stuff like that in European nights, but the atmosphere over in Turkey for football is just absolutely insane. It really is.
Yeah, I think that's right, actually. I mean, we do tend to sort of make out that, we're nobody's like us and the atmosphere's better here than anybody else. And when I've been to the Olympic Stadium in Rome for AC Milan against Roma, when Roma were going to Scudetto, I've never seen an atmosphere like it. And you look at the Turkish stuff, you go to Latin America, the Super Classico is off the scale bonkers. You know, and that's not to say we don't have great atmosphere in our country. It's not running our country down, but other people get just as passionate about football as we do. I mean, was it Fenerbahce that Souness went and planted the flag, or was that one of the other? Yeah.
No, it was Fenerbahce, yeah.
So, but there's a maybe we can get Souness back, and you can sort of go out with the Rangers party and go and stick a flag there, you know.
And be a wine merchant as he is.
You'd probably get a game in the Rangers team now if it wasn't for his recent heart problems, you know.
And I think it'll be interesting as well because Rangers are putting all their eggs into the one European basket now because they've got 12 games to go in Scotland. They're 13 points behind. And as we know, they get beat by Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup. So they'll be putting all their eggs in the one basket. But I don't know if you guys know as well, but the quarter-final draw has been drawn as well. So Rangers will be playing at home in the first leg to Roma if they get through.
That might be more difficult if they get through.
Aye, yeah. Well, that's the point, isn't it, of these stages, of these competitions, you know, that it should get more difficult the deeper into the competition you go. I mean, let's be honest, you know, we could have, you know, if we had put Bayern Munich out on Tuesday night, you know, we had the possibility of like Atletico Madrid, you know, although we have played them before and done well against them, but, you know, they're a very, very good footballing team, you know.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that Scottish clubs getting to the latter stages of any of these competitions is a good thing. Now, okay, it's unlikely they're obviously not this season going to get to the final stages, the European Cup or Champions League. But in the sort of other European competitions, there's a possibility. I mean, I can't see a Scottish club even necessarily emulating Rangers and Celtic and getting to the final now because I think the competition's too tough. But it's good for the rest of the game because it brings money in. And obviously that money is then handed, you know, dispersed through. Now, that's another contentious area. Does it only stay in the Premiership or does it go beyond that? That's an area of dispute in Scottish football. But if you haven't got the money coming in the first place, you can't actually debate how you disperse it. So, yeah, it's important for Scottish football. And I think allowing for the partisanship between Celtic and Rangers, if I can put it politely like that, there's got to be a realisation that kind of we're all in this together because Scottish football is not financially, it's like a rounding error in petty cash compared to the Premier League in England.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of Rangers, they'll just be hoping that they can win this game. Probably the benefit for them is the first legs away from home. So they'll just be hoping that they can win this tie.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, I think they could probably win the home leg of it because they have been very good in Europe at home. If you take that away from, you know, their domestic forum, but, you know, when they go to play away, I don't see them getting through the two legs personally. From a Scottish football perspective, it would be great if they did, but I don't personally see it happening.
And obviously, to move away from Rangers then, guys, the first match of the weekend tomorrow is Celtic going to Easter Road. What is your thoughts on this one, guys?
Well, the smart money, if you like, will say an away win, you know, and I certainly think it'll be an away win, but I think it'll be a difficult game. Hibs are on a nice trajectory, getting themselves back into things again. And matches between Celtic and Hibs, whether they're in Easter Road or whether they're at Celtic Park, are always pretty keenly contested. And I see the same thing happening tomorrow, but I expect Celtic to edge it.
I suppose, Alistair, the one thing that the Hibs can count on is Celtic may be a bit tired during the week, or it might be a bit of a downer after leaving the Champions League because I suppose it's very difficult for clubs to go from the high of the Champions League back to the Scottish Premier League.
Yes and no. I mean, I see that Graham Duthie in the comments has said 8-0 Celtic. I think he might not. I don't think it'll be 8-0, but I think if you're any club that's playing Celtic after a European tie, the last thing you want is Celtic to get beat, or Rangers come to that, because they will be absolutely up to go and prove the point that was, they didn't deserve it. And to be fair to Celtic, they didn't deserve it on the night. I think Hibs could possibly they won't get a doing, but I could see certainly a 3-goal margin in this.
Yeah, I mean, James, I'm sure that David Gray's an example of you need to be patient with your manager, because I'm sure they're only like 2 or 3 points now off a European spot in third place.
Yeah, and well, you know what, we talk about this all the time, don't we? That they chop and change managers too quickly. And in my personal opinion, that is absolutely true. Any manager needs time to get the club going in the direction that they want it to go. And they have to bring in the players that they feel are going to allow them to do that. And that doesn't necessarily all happen in 1 or 2 transfer windows. So really, for me personally, I think a manager, if he's given a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, that should be the bare minimum of the amount of time that he gets to try and turn things around.
Yeah. Sorry, you.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of Hibs, they'll be just hoping that Celtic have a bit of an off day, but also they've got players in there, Alistair, that can really, that if Celtic don't play to the top of their game, then they could definitely win this game.
Yes, that's true. I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, the bookies are not usually wrong. And again, not being a gambling man, I don't know what the odds are, but I'm willing to bet that Hibs aren't the favourites. They could. If you're playing the Old Firm, you've got to rely on them having a majority of players having an off day and all your players having an on day. I mean, again, this is something I've talked about before on this show. It really hacks off fans of other clubs when they hear Rangers and Celtic managers going into Europe and saying, oh yeah, but look at the financial difference. They've got much more money than us. Sorry, that sound you hear is my heart bleeding. There's absolutely the gap between the big Scottish clubs and the big European clubs is nothing like the gap between most of the Scottish League and Celtic and Rangers. So I've got no sympathy whatsoever for that. And I think most fans, other than Celtic and Rangers fans, don't have that either. But Hibs, we just talked about their financial situation. They're dependent on shareholders, etc. again, because of their loss. That doesn't affect what happens on the pitch. You've got to hope that Celtic have an off day. And I don't think, because of the way they lost in midweek, that's going to happen. I will be gobsmacked. I know I could end up this down next week eating a hat and live on the show, but I cannot see Hibs winning this.
I think Hibs might have been happier if it had gone into extra time on Tuesday night and maybe even onto penalties after that, because obviously that would have been a far more emotionally draining scenario than, the fact that they get put out with the last kick of the ball, which is emotionally draining as it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, James, have you been impressed how Jota's settled back in? Because I kind of thought it would take him a few months to get back up to his fitness, but I thought he was brilliant on Tuesday night against Bayern, and he's been great in Scotland as well, James.
Well, he's kind of just stepped back in to what he was like before he went away, and the fact that he's not played a lot of football in that period since he left to go to the Saudi League and then to France, it doesn't seem to have affected him from a fitness perspective. I thought probably we wouldn't really see him playing or starting games until the end of this month, beginning, or maybe the middle or the end of March.
Sorry, guys, that's the ice cream van coming out of the house in February, and it's pouring a rain, but anyway.
I'll have a double nugget reading.
I'll have a bowl of ice cream with some raspberry sauce. But sorry about that, guys. And I think in terms of this game as well, I think the one thing for Hibs as well is that I was looking today, Alistair, and Brendan Rodgers has not got a very good record over at Easter Road as well.
No, I know what you mean, but as I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a broken record here. Despite all that, and despite the fact that Hibs are playing much, much better, because obviously they started the season really badly, and the comment was well made about you shouldn't actually just fire your manager the moment somebody gets upset on Twitter, which seems to be what happens nowadays. And then, of course, you've got the media vultures circling around and looking for the story and making a crisis out of a drama and all that kind of thing. Hibs will give a good performance, good account of themselves. The other thing you've also got to bear in mind is that my comments about winning because Celtic or Rangers have an off day and your players all play well also might actually happen in reverse. It could be that Hibs have an off day and get honked, because that's always a possibility, and Celtic wouldn't necessarily have to play at the top of their form in those circumstances. And that's what makes football entertaining, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether Rangers are going to get beat by Queen's Park or Berwick Rangers, or Celtic are going to get beat by Clyde, or Newcastle are going to get beat by Hereford, that kind of thing. Or better still, Darvel getting won over Aberdeen, which to my mind is still the biggest Scottish Cup shock of all time.
Yep.
I've got a mate who's a big Aberdeen fan, and he would certainly agree with you on that, Alistair. He's still smarting at that particular result.
Well, I remember the day after, the night, because the A71 goes past our house, it was just rammed and solid with Aberdeen cars, all going back via Glasgow, which is the wrong way to go, by the way. And the next morning, I walked into Darvel. I live in the next village, and walked down the ground. And the manager's car, surprisingly, was still there in its parking spot. I don't think he'd driven it that night, So,
oh God, a big party.
Yeah. Sorry, we're going off the subject of Celtic and Hibs, I know, but
no problem. And just one more thing on this. I mean, like you said, Alistair. I mean, I think in terms of David Gray, I mean, he started very well the second half of the season, and he'll just be looking to build on that.
Well, yes, yeah, of course. I mean, all managers do, but you can have a wee run of form, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure what Hibs' last sort of 4 or 5 results are, but they've been pretty good, because obviously they're moving up the league. If I was a Hibs fan, do you know what I'd be looking at? I'd be looking just now at Hearts and thinking, are we going to finish above them in the league? Because for them, that's probably what matters most. Currently, I suspect Hearts might, again, I don't know what the bookies are saying, but I think Hearts have probably got a good chance of finishing third.
Yeah, and only a few weeks ago, James, that would have been so far away, because Aberdeen were about 20 points ahead.
Yeah, and that to me is the biggest shock so far this season, is the fact that Aberdeen have basically crashed, after such a fantastic start to the season. Yes, they've kind of got back on track a wee bit the last couple of games, but will they be able to get back into a position where they could end up, third? And let's be honest, at one point they looked like they would, at the very least, get second.
Yeah, I think Aberdeen, I've heard it said by a few people that they had the way the league panned out, the actual fixtures they had was actually very much to their benefit. Now, of course, they did have that great result at Parkhead, and then they got absolutely hammered in the semi-final. And I think Aberdeen, they had such a fall from grace that I'm not sure that they can actually make it. They'll be fine. They're going to end up in the top 6. A lot depends on the next few games. I think if they can actually be seen to turn the corner, they were quite lucky in some respects against Dundee. I thought Dundee could have got it earlier, So it's not like they're out of the woods yet. And I've got a soft spot for Aberdeen, having lived there for some time and been there when they won the Cup Winners' Cup. And, the difference between that Aberdeen team and this one is chalk from cheese. That was a fabulous team. So they carry a huge support. That's good for Scottish football. You want to have, I know it's a cliche, but you do want to have these clubs bringing their support and bringing money into the game, because that's what keeps it all going.
Yeah, and obviously obviously in terms of this match, then, guys, what's your prediction for this game?
I'll go 3-2 for Celtic, because I think it'll be close.
I'll go 4-1 to Celtic.
Well, I said there would be a 3-goal margin, so I was going to say 4-1 as well. So I'm just going to say 3-0 just to sort of.
The next match we'll go on to is up at Tannadice, and we're moving on to this because Motherwell got a brand new manager. He's from Austria. I don't know, guys, but I'm quite interested to watch this game tomorrow because the United against Motherwell. United have started really well. They're 1 point ahead of Aberdeen in third place, and obviously the Motherwell's got a brand new manager. So, but also, guys, I just find it interesting that Motherwell went to abroad for a new manager. Are you glad to see that happen? Or are you thinking about maybe potentially Neil Lennon or something like that?
Personally, I think it shouldn't matter where a manager comes from. You know, what you should be looking at is his ability and his record, what he's done with other clubs. If he comes from Mars, it shouldn't make any difference, you know. And I think for most fans, they don't really care where a manager comes from, unless, of course, he happens to be somebody that played for a team that they despise. You know, so like if it was like Neil Lennon becoming the Rangers manager, for instance, that would just cause eyebrows to collapse, you know.
That, I'll tell you something, James. This show would be bombarded with people complaining.
But I did think that Neil Lennon was not a shoe-in for the Motherwell job, but I did think that he probably would be one that would be quite high up on the possibilities. This guy, Wimmer, has come right out of left field for me. We spoke the other day, Regan, and as I said to you then, I honestly don't know the guy. You know, I couldn't tell you about, you know, how well he did when he was in Austria, or you know, the clubs that he did well with when he was in Germany and stuff like that, because I just don't know anything about him.
Yeah, I'm much the same. I genuinely don't. I know that Stephen Reside is really excited about the prospect. He's looked up his record and gone, yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. This is going to be fabulous. Now, Motherwell in the worst run of form in the Premiership just now. I think it's even worse than Aberdeen over the last 5 or 6 games. And they've been losing games for fun. I mean, they must be bad because we've beaten them twice, right? So on that basis, this is actually really important for them. I couldn't see Lennon going there simply because I suspect he would want too much money. I'm not sure Motherwell could afford that. But when you go abroad, the one thing I think, which I don't know what you guys think, you have to bring in somebody who understands something about Scottish football. Mm-hmm. You absolutely do, because they need to have contacts. We've all seen managers come in. I think Hibs, you know, various other clubs have had managers from abroad, or even from Ireland sometimes, you know, and they don't understand Scottish football. They don't have the contacts to get players in who can play at this level. Don't be surprised if you see players coming in from this guy's past, because that's what he knows. That's what all managers do. They go for their comfort zone. Yep. They know. Can they cope with Scottish football? Because I tell you this, based on what I've seen with the guys we've signed recently, it takes some time to get used to it. That's one thing which with Scottish football is slightly different. You can see guys who played at a decent level in Sweden, you know, elsewhere, and they just find it really, really hard. And you have your time, if you're in Motherwell's situation of being in free fall, to lose a few more games, because although you expect a bounce, if they don't get it, then the fans are going to be very quickly disillusioned, because fans nowadays, as we said before, get fed up very quickly, and all of a sudden there's a demand for a new manager.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you guys, obviously, we've not heard this Stuart Kettlewell in a few days, but he spoke to Sky Sports News on Thursday, and I found that astonishing, guys, that he said that Motherwell were winning 2-0 against Aberdeen, and basically he looked over to his wife and his children, and his wife said she had to leave even though Motherwell were 2-0 up, because fans were still complaining.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, football fans are the most fickle in the world of any entertainment sphere, you know what I mean? And I include Celtic supporters in there as well, you know, because I mean, look at the furore when Brendan Rodgers was coming back, you know, and there was all these people that were never going to go back to Celtic Park if he got back in, you know, and now they're all loving him because he's basically come in and done what he said he was going to do, and actually gone that wee bit further by taking him in to almost getting into the last 16 in the Champions League. So it's all about success at the end of the day. For a football fan, if your club is being successful at whatever level they are at, you're happy. But the minute that success starts to go, then you start getting on. And generally speaking, it's the players and the manager are the ones that suffer. But if it's the families of the players and the managers that are suffering because of it, then that is an absolute no-no.
Yeah, it's well documented what's happened at Motherwell with Kettlewell, and we have to stress that the majority of Motherwell fans are actually decent, but unfortunately at every club there's a hardcore of, can we call them nutters? Yes, I just have. No, that's a polite way of putting it, right? Who quite frankly have no respect for anybody else's feelings. Now, I know that at McDermott, the players' families, wives, etc., are in a bit of the main stand, which is relatively sort of away from other fans, and people know who they are. And that's not to say you don't get complaints about the players, but it's so fundamental, because you think about it, how's a player going to perform at his best if he thinks his missus or his kids are getting grief? He's just not.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's for me personally, if I was in a job where my family were getting stick for my non-performance, it would certainly have an effect on my ability to continue to do my job, because I'd be worrying about what was happening, with the kids at school, or was my wife getting accosted in the supermarket by people shouting and bawling about, what her husband was doing. It's just not on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and obviously the question this guy put to Stuart Kettlewell was about Alistair. Basically, does he think that it might impact future people maybe employing him? And obviously Stuart Kettlewell said no, but do you think it might put off people off from employing him?
For me personally, no. If I was running a football club and he was in the frame to become the manager, the fact that he left Motherwell because of abuse that his family was getting and he was getting, it wouldn't prevent me from giving him the job. If I felt he was the best person, he would get the job.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, he's one thing. You watch managers on the touchline. I mean, where I sit, that were basically the way dugouts more or less in front of me. Admittedly, a bit further down because I'm sort of halfway up the stand, but. And you see how managers respond, and you look at Robinson, for example. I mean, he's always on the edge, and Kettlewell's much the same. He's wanting to get involved, and there's more than one way to act on the touchline. But I always thought, you look at Stuart Kettlewell's record, it's pretty good. And if you're looking for, there'll be lots of clubs looking for managers in the next wee while, and when I say next wee while, the next year or so, I'll be surprised if he's not actually on a few people's shortlists. Because if you're a Motherwell fan, you can always look on the dark side. I mean, they might have got Craig Levine. I just said that because Graham's joined us.
I know he can't avoid being on the screen with me, can you, Graham?
No, I've missed you too much, mate.
Come on then, what's your take on Kettlewell and Motherwell and their new manager?
I said at the time that I felt sorry for Kettlewell. I think anyone that gets personal abuse, I think it's ridiculous and it shouldn't happen. I think he's a good manager. I think he will get another job somewhere else. The new manager's interesting. I heard Drake talk about earlier on, would go down a different route. I think, like most folk, I'm intrigued to see how he's going to do coming to Scottish football. I know nothing about the guy, I'll be honest. But I'm intrigued to see what he does. But again, it's one of these things that was talked about last week. The Scottish media will now be after him, because that's what they do when foreign managers come in. They're like, right, how's this going to go? This could go really badly. We'll try and get our old mates into the jobs. I'm intrigued to see how he does. I think he'll do all right. I've read up a bit on him. He actually does seem to be quite a decent coach. So I think he'll do all right. But I did feel sorry for Kettlewell. The way it ended shouldn't end like that.
Yeah.
Who was the Italian guy, Alistair, that got appointed at Rugby Park?
Oh, It was something like not Alice, but it was some kind of Italian Alessandro.
Is it Alessi?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think he might have got punted after we beat them, actually, or quite a few weeks after did we draw with them? I remember he had a result which wasn't all that good against us, and then he'd gone a few weeks later. But that's the point I was making earlier. If you don't understand Scottish football, it's really hard coming into it. And I think the one thing I would say the guy at Motherwell's done, which I wouldn't have done if I was him, is he's basically talked about we're going to play this really attacking football. We're going to be in the top 6. He didn't say whether it was the Championship or the Premiership, mind you. So that's giving the media, as Graham said, a stick to beat him with. If I was him, I'd be like, okay, we'll settle in, see how it goes, and we'll try and make some improvements and just see how it goes. Because the moment you start saying, look, we're going to change the way the team plays, we're going to be on the front foot, if that doesn't happen, then that's another reason why fans can get hacked off quickly. So I'm not sure he got that right, but I wish the guy well, because as has been agreed here, you pick the best guy for the job, and it may well turn out to be a rolling success. Who knows?
I suppose the big thing, Graham, I read a thing today that Motherwell have got 32 first team players. That's a lot of players, because they obviously had 12 players injured, so they had to bring a lot of players in January. But he's going to find it hard to keep 32 first team players happy.
I mean, I think he's trying to do a Hearts. When we had Romanoff, we had about 85 players in the book, so he's going down that kind of. Yeah, it is a lot. I think you need probably about 25, 26 man squad. That's probably more than enough. Yeah. But to have a big squad like that, trying to keep everyone happy is really difficult. Yes, the injuries, of course, don't help, and that probably did for Kettlewell. I think the big thing for me is they've kept hold of Lennon Miller in this window, which I think was massive.
Yeah.
But I really hope he does well. You know, I've said it so many times that whenever a foreign manager comes in, I think they're judged very, very quickly. And it's to be honest, it's not just him. When Hearts supported Ian Cathro, he was basically talked about as a laptop manager and that kind of stuff. The media were after him after his first game. The media in Scotland can be very, very brutal. So if he doesn't start well, he's going to find that's going to happen. And Motherwell fans might be on his back as well.
Yeah, I mean, the media, you just talk about that game. I remember the media were after Ange Postecoglou after his first game, he got beat. And then so
that was at Tynecastle.
Yep.
Where's that again? Who plays there? Some wee team in it? Some wee team that wears red or something?
We beat Bayern Munich, though.
Touché. So, that was brilliant. Well done. That was like the time I did the Hampden tour, and there was a Rangers fan there. They were asking what team you support, and I said St Johnstone. He said, who are they? And I said, well, the team who's won more trophies than yours has in the last 10 years.
I mean, in terms of this match tomorrow, guys, how do you see it going? Dundee United against Motherwell?
I'd like for the guy to get the new manager bounce and get a win, but I think Dundee United will take it 2-0.
What about you?
I'm going to sit in the fence here. I think it's a really hard one to call, because I think United have actually probably punched slightly above the weight that the fans were expecting. I don't think their fans were expecting to do quite as well as they've done. And I think they're potentially due a wee slip, because people can't go through the whole season carrying on at the same level all the time. Not even Celtic can do that, you know. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw.
And Graham, what about you, mate?
Well, if Motherwell win, they've got the headline, the winner takes it all. But I think it'll be United that win. I didn't do that deliberately. That just came out of my head. I think United will win it by 2-1.
A wee bit of ABBA there, Graham.
Yep.
I thought you were going to blast out the song there.
Take a chance on me.
Yeah, Reagan, I'm conscious that I'm heading off about 15:15 and that Graham's sitting here, and that the game on Sunday is the most important game.
Yes.
So I would like to ask Graham how much he thinks Hearts are going to win by.
Well, I put 8-0 Celtic in the chat earlier. I'm going to go 8-0 Hearts on Sunday.
Okay, that's probably unlikely. But is that a half time or is that a full time?
No, that's after 20 minutes.
That's after 20 minutes. Okay, right. Well, I do hope not. we'll wait and see. Incidentally, if you could do so, this is a personal request to Graham here, nothing whatsoever to do with the show, but on Sunday I'm presenting an award to the guy who won the Fan of the Year thing for the SFSA, and it's a guy who's a Saints fan who does a shed load of stuff. The guy has got terminal cancer. He's probably not going to see the year out. So as many Hearts fans applauding that guy tomorrow, Stuart Faulkner, would be fabulous, because it's a really worthy recipient of it. So if you're at the game, Graham, you'll see this strange man standing on the pitch. That's me. And as for the score, I would bite your hand off for a draw now.
Aye, I mean, obviously St John's the bottom of the league, but you seen general improvement under the new manager.
Well, it was till last weekend. Last weekend was, depending on your point of view, it was either a blip in the road or it was actually just falling over the cliff again. We were very, very poor. What was more scary was that Dale had clearly looked at the way we played. Now, I live, as you guys know, quite near Kilmarnock. And talking to Kilmarnock fans, they said Kilmarnock played in a totally different style from the way they'd played in previous weeks. They were right up on our penalty box, pressing all the way through and stopping us playing out from the back. And they obviously got their first goal from that. So Dale comprehensively outthought Simo Valakari. And that kind of concerns me. And Valakari is not giving out playing out at the back. So if I was Hearts, I would do exactly the same thing, because our players, although we've got new guys and they're still getting acclimatised and they're not quite used to Scottish football, Valakari is playing very similar players in midfield. The one guy who actually is worthwhile paying to watch, and I hope he starts the game, is the wee boy Duke McKenna, who looks like he's about 12. And I've talked, I think, about him before. He can beat people for fun. He's a proper winger who actually, instead of getting the ball out wide and then passing it back and then recirculating it, actually takes the guy on. And then once he's beaten him, he takes him on again. And then he passes it back, gets the ball, passes, takes him on again. He is worth the admission money if he's on form. And that's the kind of thing which you kind of hope, as I said, I would take a draw now. We've got 3 games to save our season and we need 6 points from them minimum. But if we lose, because we'll obviously know the scores on Saturday, we'll know where we are in the league. We've got Ross County and Dundee, which is an absolute 6-pointer to end all 6-pointers, as far as we're concerned. We're almost certainly down. Let's not kid ourselves. But taking a point off Hearts would be good.
Yeah, I mean, Graham, I just want to ask you in terms of Hearts. Obviously, me and James broke about 4:30 there about the SFA apologising to Hearts in terms of they should have had a penalty. I mean, what did you make of that?
I can't swear on this show, but it's a bit late now. I mean, anybody could have seen that's a penalty last week. You didn't need to have a review panel to see that. I've said it before, I can forgive a referee on the park not getting a decision right, because it's full speed, it's difficult to tell. But I can't understand the guy in the VAR room who's got the screens in front of him. He can rewind it back. He's got every angle, and you still get that wrong. You don't need numerous looks of that. I could tell after one look it was a clear push. I heard Chris Sutton last week saying, Wilson's looking for it. At no point does James Wilson look behind him to see where Niziala is. It only goes down because he's pushed in the back. It was quite clearly a penalty.
Yep,
and I asked the guys on the rest view last week after the game, that is more of a penalty than what the one Rangers got against Queen's Park. That wasn't a difficult call. And now you've got the KMI panel coming out and saying, that was an error. I'm sure that when he does his video, Will O'Connell say the same thing. You cannot get these decisions wrong. And the worst thing is, if we get the penalty scored, going 2-1 up, I think we'll win the game. But 40 seconds after that, Rangers go and score. I mean, that's a big moment in the game, and it costs us the game. You can't get those decisions wrong. Apology means nothing. You have got to get that right. And I don't understand why the guy in VAR has not called the referee over and said, I think you need to have a look at that. It's a terrible decision, and apologies mean nothing, but it is happening every single week.
And I think especially also the fact that they said on the TV that VR didn't properly look at it as well.
Yeah, I can't disagree with a word that Graham said. It was just wrong on every count. And if we didn't have VAR, you would probably get on with it and say, look, okay, referees make mistakes. But of course, what you've now got is conspiracy theories again against John Beaton because it's Rangers. I personally don't believe that is the case. You can support, referees all support teams. We know that, and what you can certainly look at is the overall standard in Scotland. Is it good enough? There's a shortage of referees generally. We were talking about abuse to managers. Referees get abused left, right, and centre. And why would you want to do it? You get something over 800 quid a game for it. You get to be all on the pitch alongside great players. I get all that, but yeah, it was a shocking decision. And part of the problem is that we actually don't have transparency in terms of who this review panel are. We kind of know the kind of people they are. My understanding is they're people who don't even know the laws. That's just ridiculous.
Me and you spoke to Des 2 weeks ago, and Des was of the understanding it was people involved in media. I find that astonishing that people involved in media were looking over football matches, because no offence to people in the media that do newspapers, I don't think they're reading the referee rule book.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. I mean, the fact is they don't. Most players don't know the laws. That's why you have referees. That's why they have to do their courses, etc. You haven't got a referee, you haven't got a game. And I accept, and I've like Graham, I've had incidents where I've been absolutely raging. I've also had incidents where actually I think that was never a penalty. Then you see it back and you go, actually, well, it was. We got away with one there. The St Mirren one recently. And when Dre Wright brought the boy down. Now, you always got those in the past as well. And as you know, I'd scrap VAR tomorrow. I just think it's an absolute nonsense. But it has such... Graham's right. Hearts would have won that game. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because they're the better team. And that's the kind of thing which can make a huge difference. Now, it's not going to alter who wins the league. But in terms of Hearts, and I still think, I don't know if it wasn't the show, I still think Hearts have got a good chance of finishing third the way they're playing. That might have made a difference to them being third or fourth with the money and the prestige and all the stuff and the Europe that goes with it.
I don't know if you want to if you want to jump back to it, Graham. Do you think they can finish third?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen enough of Hearts recently to know that we're actually playing a lot of good stuff. I thought last week we were very good. I was disappointed to lose the game, of course I was. But we had 21 attempts against Rangers. I don't think we've had 21 attempts in Rangers in about 5 years. We played far, far better. I liked the formation we played. I liked the fact he played three up front. And I know I had the bravado earlier saying we're winning 8-0 on Sunday. I'm expecting a tough game against St Johnstone. They'll make it difficult. But the way that we're playing just now, there's every chance that we can get that top three, top four. All I'm thinking about now is top six. There's 7 games to go. We're a point off it. Things will change tomorrow. Of course they will. But I'm really pleased with how we're playing. And I think Neil Critchley, I said at the start when I came in, I wasn't overly convinced. He's turned around. He's got us playing some really good stuff. I like the way that he's talking. And I think the big thing for me as well, and don't get me wrong, I love being in European football, don't get me wrong. But I actually think you can tell now, the fact we're not in Europe is actually helping us. We're not playing Thursday, Sunday every week. It's making a big, big difference. More time in the training pitch. I think the new players have been really good. Kabangu's been excellent. Yeah, he could have had a hat-trick last week. We look a lot better. We're scoring goals now. I think the new guy that's come in, I know he got 2 own goals last week, but McCart's actually been very good for us. So there's no reason that Hearts should not be looking up that table thinking we can finish, maybe not third, but certainly top 4 with the way we're playing. But Sunday's a big bait. Sunday's a big game. If we win that game, assuming that Celtic win tomorrow, we could go a point behind Hibs. That would be massive, given how far they were ahead of us. So there's a lot to be positive about, I think, with Hearts. We just need to keep up that level of performance, but take our chances when they come along.
I think that if I was a Hearts fan, the one thing that would worry me about going to McDermott Park is Jamie McCart scoring another own goal, because the last time I saw him playing against Hearts there, he scored the winner. Don't know if you remember that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is you've got Mackenzie Kirk, who will be out to put one over, I suspect. Having said that, he's been pants in the last couple of weeks. He's missed sitter after sitter, so you're probably all right.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of this match, Graham, are you feeling a bit happier than you were a few weeks ago, like you said? Since the new players have come in, no, I think they've been playing really well.
New players gives you a lift. It gives the whole team a lift. It gives the whole place a lift. Just seeing these new guys coming in, I've been very impressed as well. And I think as well, you've got Cal Noonhoff that's just come back after a year out. Scored his first touch against St Mirren in the Cup. You've got him back as well. Shanklin started to look a little bit better. Again, there's more rumours of a contract talk, so I'm getting bored with that now. But I think the new players have definitely helped. You know, Michael Steinwender came in last week, got a goal. I'm really impressed with the business that Critchley's done in his first window. He's done very, very well. We just need to keep it going. I think the only kind of slight negative just now around the Hearts fan base is about the goalkeeping situation. Should it be Craig Gordon? Should it be Xander Clark? It's a difficult one because I like them both. I think right now probably Gordon does have the gloves, but he has made a couple of mistakes recently. Maybe could have done better last week. Could have done better at the St Mirren goal. But I don't think he'll get dropped. I think it'll be Craig Gordon goes to the end of the season unless there's a massive injury again or he has a really bad loss of form.
Yeah, but, I mean, I was just going to ask you, you're talking about Shackland possibly getting a new contract. I mean, do you not feel it's best that he moves on for both to get a fresh start?
I think it's a difficult one because I love Shankland. He's the best striker I've seen at Hearts since John Robertson, and that was a long time ago. But he has been off form. There's no doubt about that. But the last 2 seasons, what he's done, 31 goals last season, Player of the Year award. Season before that, 28 goals. He has fallen off this season, which is rather than how bad Hearts have done. But we're not going to get the same money for him that we would have done last season if we sold him. So do you take the risk and sell him for nothing and let him go for nothing? Or do you take what money you get? It's a difficult one. Right now, if I'm basing it on form, I'd probably say I'd let him go. I think it'll be the summer he'll go anyway, but it's dragging on that much now because it seems to be every week there's talk about will he stay, will he go? We just want something to happen. Whether he's going to come out and say, you know what, this is my last season, I'm going, then fine. But it's the fact that it just keeps going on and on and on, and nobody knows what's happening. He's either staying or he's not. It's not a difficult decision. But if I was thinking right now what I think will happen, I think this is his last season, and I think he goes for nothing in the summer. I'm just got to take that chance, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was going to ask Alistair as well. You starting to get a little bit more worried there since we're approaching 10 games to go, and St John's are still languishing at the bottom of the table.
I've been worried since last September. In fact, to be fair, I've been worried since the September before that as well, because we've seen this coming for the last couple of years. It's the chickens coming home to roost. I've talked about it before. The mismanagement of the club really has been shocking. Stan Harris has come in and actually stabilised the finances. We've made a minor profit compared to £2 million loss the year before. We actually made a 6-figure profit. But we've got too many players. I mean, Graham was talking about the size of the squad. We've got far more than that. We can't get rid of people like Cammy McPherson, despite the queue of fans outside with their motors running, prepared to take anywhere, right? So you're looking at this and thinking, well, somehow or other, you've got to try and stay up. It doesn't look like it. I mean, let's be honest. If I wasn't on this show, you'd all be sitting there going, yeah, Saints are down. And almost certainly we are. But where there's life, there's hope. It's the hope that kills you. So answer your question is, I've been worried about this for the last couple of years, and I think this is the chickens coming home to roost. I'm more worried about whether we'd get back up again, because I think a lot of Saints fans think it would be dead easy, and I don't think it will. Because you look at who's going to come up from the Championship. We don't know who that's going to be yet, but there's going to be really good teams left down there. It could be Falkirk, it could be Ayr. You know, it's going to be really hard to get back up again next season.
I was going to ask you that, Alistair. I mean, we all talk about the fact, and I've said it previously, the Championship's probably the most competitive in Scotland. Whoever goes down, whether it's St Johnstone or Ross County, I don't think they'll be able to come back up because it's a very difficult league. Everyone can beat everyone, and whoever goes down, if it is St Johnstone, I think it might take longer than one season to come straight back up.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think for the new American owner, it'll be a learning curve because he's got no experience whatsoever of this. And you're looking at, obviously, you'd have to cut the costs. That would be players, that would be people on the ground as well. You know, the people behind the scenes would lose their jobs, all those things which are not good. You've got players like Carey who are coming to the end of their careers, who's still on his day a match winner in any Premier League game. He can win a match for any team. You've got a lot of guys on loan who are obviously not going to stay. The boy Fisher is on loan, the goalkeeper. He's not too bad, although he was badly at fault with the free kick last Saturday. And, you know, on that basis, it looks like Vallecari's bringing in guys who are permanent signings to possibly get himself back out of the Championship. But I agree with you, Graham. I don't think we'd be favourites at all. I think I genuinely don't know who's going to come up, but I do know whoever's going to stay down is going to be really hard to beat. And if you go into it thinking, oh, we're the big team, guaranteed that's not the way it's going to work. I think you're right. It'll be really hard. I know it's not going to happen, but I would much rather have a bigger Premier League and have teams like Falkirk being able to bring through young players. We've talked about this many, many times. You don't see enough young players coming into the Scottish game. Taking away that fear factor, I think it'd be better for the international team. It's not going to happen because we won't get the money for it, but I'd love to see it happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the last thing for me to do, Alistair, because I know you need to go very soon, but in terms of prediction, what are you thinking for this game?
I think Dundee will get beat by Ross County. Apart from that, do you know what? I'll be very surprised if we win because the Hearts are playing well. Graham's right, the Hearts are playing well. We would have to we talked before about you've got to hope that the opposition have a bad day. Have Hearts had a bad day recently at all, Graham? Have they had any rubbish performances or are they due one?
I hope we're not due one.
Okay, that didn't really answer the question, but never mind.
No, we've maybe had a couple of games have not been quite as good, but the last couple of weeks we have been far, far better.
Yeah, Hearts should, on paper, Hearts should win. The pitch isn't very good, which doesn't help. A lot will depend on the team that we pick. I would like to see Carey start because, as I said, he's capable of doing anything. I'd like to see the wee boy start in the wing, and I'd actually like to see him play two forwards, which he won't do, because I'd like to see him play Sidibe alongside Kirk, because I think that would give the Hearts defence a lot to think about. Because Sidibe is now starting to look like he might be the player he was before. I'm going to say it's a draw at 1-1, but I'll be surprised if we win.
In terms of you, Graham, what do you think about this game?
Well, as long as McCart realises he's got a Hearts top on, we might be all right. I'm going to go 2-1 Hearts.
What about you, James?
Well, personally, I think McCart will be going for the record of 3 own goals in a single game. So, no, I think it will be 3-0 to Hearts. Sorry, Alistair.
That's all right. I'm going to go now. I'm so upset. So. Right, gents. I am going to have to go because otherwise I get divorced at this point in the night. But thank you for your company. And are you going on Sunday, Graham?
I'm not. No, I've got the family here.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Well, I'll give you a wage for the pitch. Maybe it depends what the score is, mind you. You know. So hopefully it'll be 2-0 us at half time, so I can make a time honoured gesture. You know. Right, gents. At that.
Yeah, Alistair.
Cheers. Aye, so in terms of the game, Graham, I mean, obviously, St Johnson will be huge, not fancying their chances because, like you say, Neil has done a good job for his coming at Tynecastle.
Yeah, he has. He's definitely got the players playing a lot better. You know, he's talked about the fundamentals. He's talked about what the fans want to see, and he's right, especially at home. We want to see a pressing team, a team that goes after teams like we did last week. We just need to be more clinical. But Alistair mentioned this at Jonathan Pitcher. I actually did see it earlier. It doesn't look great, but it shouldn't really matter. You know, Hearts have got the players to go out and get a job done. And if we play like we have been recently, I'm not going to say it's going to be comfortable, but I think we've got the players that can win this game. And, you know, Elton Cabank for me has been fantastic. Should have had a couple last week, but honestly, the difference is made to us in terms of physicality up front, the pace up front, the movement. And I'm a big fan of James Wilson as well. 17-year-old, I think he's been excellent. So yeah, there's far more positivity around Hearts these days than there was a few weeks ago. I just hope that continues.
And I think, James, I think this is a great game because it's going to be on Sky. I think it makes a great change for Scottish football because often you see Celtic and Rangers matches only on Sky, but it's good to see Sky have chosen Johnson versus Hearts.
Yeah, well, I mean, generally speaking, from a Sky point of view, they'll obviously want the best games. Generally speaking, the best games are going to be, the team that's at the top of the league and maybe the team in the second place in the league. But I do think that they should spread it out far more than they do. But from a purely financial point of view, Sky don't want to put a game on that people are going to turn off of because it is absolutely boring them to tears.
Yeah, and let's just hope that this game's got loads of goals in that because, like you said, I don't want it to be a 0-0 and people are turning off. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'll go for a 2-1 to Hearts for this game.
Right. Right, let's move to another game. I'm getting bored with Hearts now.
Yeah, I mean, the next match to talk about is Rangers and St Mirren.
No, move on.
So what do you guys make of this game?
Oh, I suppose it'll probably depend what Rangers team turns up on the day. The fact that they're at home should be more than enough for them to win. But as we know, they haven't done particularly well at home in the league this season. And St Mirren have been doing quite well. I thought genuinely when I was watching the cup game against Hearts, I genuinely thought that St Mirren were going to beat Hearts. And the way that it ended up going to, extra time and then going to penalties and then obviously, Hearts go through on the penalties was a real shocker to me because I honestly thought that St Mirren would take it. I think, for me personally, I see it being a draw.
That's a bit of a shock because for me, I think Rangers need to bounce back. But fair enough, James. In terms of you, Graham, how do you see this going?
I wasn't overly impressed by Rangers last week, to be honest, at Tynecastle. I didn't think they were, as much as I thought Hearts were very good, I don't think Rangers were great. I thought they were pretty poor. And it kind of showed after that Queen's Park game they were very vulnerable defensively. If St Mirren have got any chance, all they've got to do is watch what Queen's Park did. Just go Ibrox, sit back, frustrate, and let Rangers try and break you down because they're not very good at it. Last week they've managed to get 2 on goals. So I don't think they're a great side. They probably will end up winning it. But I still feel that I honestly still don't think Clement's there at the end of the season. I'm surprised he's not gone already. I think the only reason he's not been sacked is because they're still in Europe. If it wasn't for that, I think he'd be gone by now. But St Mirren against Hibs last week wasn't a great game, not one that'll live long in the memory, but St Mirren could have won it. They're a difficult side to play against, and Olisanya up front has got bags and bags of pace. If he gets in behind it and causes them problems, I would expect Rangers to win, but I think it's going to be a very tough game for them. And I'm not overly impressed with them. I don't really know what Philip Clement's trying to do with that team.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Graham.
I don't think Clement knows either. To be honest,
I don't think it's they're still in Europe, Graham. I think it's financial, to be honest, because I was listening to Craig Moore the other day, and Craig Moore was saying basically that if you look at Rangers, that Queen's Park result was one of the worst in the history. So sure, you need to sack a manager after a result like that. I mean, it's not as if Rangers got beat off of Aberdeen. They've got beat up at Queen's Park. In Queen's Park, they got beat by 2-1 by Hamilton Accies. The following week. So for me, I don't think it's because they're still in Europe. I think it's financial.
I think for me, it's a combination of both of those things. I think I saw recently that they said it would cost 1.2 million if they were to get rid of Clement early, which at this point in time, take away the fact that there might be some sort of investment coming into the club. If you take that out of the picture, I don't think they can afford to pay him off £1.2 million to get short of him. But I think the fact that that they're still in Europe means that he is hanging on. And if they do get through in the round of 16 and get past that, then he'll cling on a wee bit longer. I think up until they're out of Europe, I think he's not safe as such, but he'll cling on longer.
I was going to ask you.
But I genuinely think, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, the worry for me is just how far ahead Celtic are of everyone else. Like in terms of money, in terms of power, they're so far ahead, and I just think they're going to get even stronger. Even if Rangers do get this investment, they might do, I don't know. But even if they do get this investment, Celtic are so far ahead, it is unbelievable. They've just gone toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich and should have won. I said this the night as well. Celtic were brilliant, should have won that game. Rangers, the week before that, are put out of the Scottish Cup with Queen's Park. Celtic are so far ahead, but not just of Rangers, of everybody. And it's only going to get worse. And I kind of agree with what Alistair said earlier, and I've said this as well. I would love the league to get extended. It won't happen. But for anyone to even try and catch Celtic, they need major investment. Not just Rangers, but every other team needs major investment. Doesn't happen. Celtic are just far, far too strong. And I think they're just going to dominate for even more years to come. And that's a sad ending of the Scottish football, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Graham. I think that the league should be expanded. To be honest, I got a bit fed up playing the same teams, on such a regular basis. I think if we had, 18-team league, 20-team league, it would certainly be much more interesting. But the opposite side of that coin is, can the teams that are potentially going to come into the Premier League from the Championship, can they actually afford that step up without some sort of help?
Well, I think teams like Falkirk as well going right in saying that they're still got their actress off pitch, but from next season, the SFL looking to ban the surfaces from the stadiums.
Yeah, that's another thing. I've said this before. I don't mind these pitches in lower league, but it shouldn't be in it shouldn't be in the SPL. I've said that so many times. See, when you watch, always have to pick on them because they're here, but when you watch Kilmarnock, that pitch is awful. It's a terrible pitch, and even Kilmarnock fans think that as well. The sooner that goes, the better. But I don't think there should be any of those pitches in the top flight. It's not a good look for me. Lower league, fine, but not in the top flight.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and that just makes a brilliant segue for me to ask you about the scoreline for this match, and then we can move on to talk about Kilmarnock.
Well, as I said, I reckon it will be a draw.
I'll go for 3-1 to Rangers. I just think St Mirren they'll part the bus, Graham, and I'll just feel like it'll be too much for them, and I think Rangers will win 3-1.
I think it depends. If Rangers score early, it could be, but if the longer that game goes at 0-0, then Queen's Park will come back to haunt them again. I'm going to go 2-1 Rangers. I think it'll be close. I'm going to go 2-1 Rangers.
Yeah, Graham. I just wanted to. Obviously, James was on with me at 5 o'clock this afternoon. But what do you make of Rangers? Last 16 and quarter final draw, Graham. Rangers drew Fenerbahce and Roma.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad draw, but we all know that Rangers in Europe are a different animal. I don't know why that is. In the league, their form is very patchy, but in Europe, they seem to do really well. And fair play to them for that. I think they'll look at that and fancy their chances of getting through. Fenerbahce are not a great side in Turkey. They're a decent side. And, of course, the Jose Mourinho factor as well. But I think Rangers will fancy their chances in that game. And Roma, that's a difficult game because Roma are a good side. I've watched a few of the games previously. That'll be a difficult game. But the way Rangers play in Europe is completely different. And I think they'll fancy their chances in those games. I really do.
Yep. Moving on now to Pittodrie, Aberdeen. They go up against the former manager. What do you make of this game, Graham? Because, I mean, Aberdeen, Aberdeen are the enigma of the season so far. They start off so well this season, and then they fall away. 15 games not winning a match, but then they beat Dundee by 2-1 last week.
I felt that was a massive, massive game for Aberdeen. It shouldn't have been, because I think Jimmy Thielen's done very well in his first season. But if they'd lost that game last week, you'd have had a lot of folks saying he's got to go, which I don't agree with at all. That's a massive, massive win. What a goal by Keskin, it was a great finish. But that just takes a bit of pressure off. I never ever thought Aberdeen were in a title race start the season. I always knew they'd fall off. I just didn't expect it to be quite as bad as that. But that was a huge, huge win. That was needed. I think they'll get a bit of confidence from that. They'll go into this game at home now a wee bit more up for it, I think. The form's been crazy. I don't know why they fell off so badly, but maybe, a couple of wins, things could change very quickly. But yeah, last week felt massive. And when Dundee got the goal back, you think, oh, here we go again. Dundee will come back and get a draw at this game. It's a huge win. But I do feel a bit sorry for Thielen, because he's had a lot of games that they haven't actually played that badly. It's just not won. But that's a big win for them last week, because honestly, I think if they'd lost that game, the pressure would have told, and I think it would have been very harsh.
And obviously in terms of Derek, he knows Aberdeen very well, but as Alistair was saying, they got a 2-1 last week, so they'll be hoping to build on it, James.
And to be honest, I would hope that they could build on it as well, and try and sort of drag themselves back into that sort of contention of being higher up the league. But the thing with Derek McInnes, of course, is that he really knows Aberdeen as a club, but how much does he know about them now with the current players that they have? Could he hold, the Indian sign over them, so to speak, and get the win? I think it's a draw, that game as well, for me personally.
I kind of watched the highlights that come on it last week. They've been such an up and down side this season. You don't know what you're going to get with come on it. 1 minute they're really good, the next they're really poor. I don't think they're like big players like Danny Armstrong have been particularly great this season. I mean, going to Pittodrie, of course, isn't going to be easy, but Kilmarnock are such a difficult side to play against. They make it difficult defensively. They're very, very good. They do have threats on the break, but you just kind of think at Pittodrie, it's a game that Aberdeen should be winning, but their form's been so patchy, it's a difficult one to call, I think.
Yeah, and to me, I wonder if they'll be able to bully Aberdeen into submission, as it were, because they're a very physical side, Kilmarnock. Anytime I've seen them this season, even in highlights, programmes, they are a very physical team. And from what I've seen of, Aberdeen since the turn of the year, they seem a little bit lightweight in that respect to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially if we look up front, Kevin Nisbet against, was it not Dundee? It was the week before that in the Cup. Missed an absolute sitter against Dunfermline. He's not been as good as I would have thought he would be for Aberdeen. I think they did miss Papa Gay start the season. He's back now. The one that everyone looks at is Graham Shinnie. He's quite physical, but again, he's not been on form as well. I mean, do you think that the criticism of Jimmy Thielen recently has been a little bit over the top, considering it's his first job in Scottish football?
Well, personally, I do. I think he talks a lot of sense, and he's very level-headed when he's being interviewed, after the games, regardless of what the result has been. For some people, I think that sort of dispassionate sort of view of things maybe is a negative thing in their eyes. But for me, I think, the manager has to be, especially in a chat with the media after a game, right after a game, has to be as dispassionate as he possibly can be, because it's so easy to say something, out of turn, and everybody just jumps on it, and then they start having a field day.
I was saying to Reagan and the guys a couple of weeks ago that it kind of shows, obviously, apart from Celtic who are miles away, if you look at the rest of that league table, it is so tight. Kilmarnock could be in relegation trouble or they could be in the top 6. Honestly, that is just how crazy this league is. Do you think Kilmarnock could be in relegation trouble this season, or will they end up in that top 6?
I think they'll be in the top 6, but probably just in the top 6. I think that it's so close, isn't it? Between those sort of teams from 3rd to 6th at the moment in the Premier League, it's really quite close. And anybody that does kind of get into that top 6 come the split, they will literally get in there by the skin of their teeth. And I see we've got Regan back again.
It's good to be back on, guys. I mean, in terms of Aberdeen, I mean, they'll just be hoping to build on what they were doing last week, because in terms of the run they were on, Graham, that must have been just a bit demoralising for them, because I remember me and you were on the show in maybe October time, and people were saying Aberdeen can finish above Rangers in that.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought Aberdeen would be at least top 3. I never thought they'd win the league. I always thought Celtic would win the league quite comfortably. But that run they had, I mean, they've ended up losing more games than they won at the start of the season, which is crazy. But this is the way the league goes. If you lose a couple of games, you just start going on a really bad run that they can't get out of, which is why I think last week was probably the game a lot of folk were looking at as neutrals, thinking if they lose this, could feel them be under pressure, which I'm just saying to James, I think is very harsh, because it's his first job in Scotland. He's done very well at the start of the season, but I just felt last week was huge. To get that monkey off the back, to get that win, they can now go into the game tomorrow with our confidence. But again, if Aberdeen were to lose tomorrow, then it's back to square one again.
Yeah, I mean, James, first of all, I'm going to come to you for a prediction in this game.
Actually, I'm going to go 2-1 Aberdeen.
Yeah, I think I would go for 3-1 to Aberdeen. Graham?
I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Oh.
Sitting on the fence.
The next match is over in Dundee. They play Ross County. Graham, how do you see this game going?
Dundee have been pretty poor recently, haven't they? I mean, to get hammered 6-0 by Hearts, to get hammered 6-0 by Celtic, to then lose last week, they've been a really poor run, and they could actually get dragged into that relegation battle, the way they're playing just now. And I like Tony Docherty. He's a good manager. Obviously, we've got them in the Cup, which will be difficult. But, again, Ross County are such a really weird team this season. Again, I said at the start of the season, I thought they've been in a relegation battle again. I still think they will be. I think this is a huge game for both teams. I really, really think it's a big, big game. I mean, Dundee at home, I mean, they'll be looking at make up for that game last week, because they weren't brilliant against Aberdeen last week, but they could have snatched a draw. I don't know what I'm going to get with Ross County. They're such a strange team this season. I think Dundee will win this 1-0. There won't be a lot of goals in this. It won't be a classic, I don't think.
No, I don't think it will be a classic myself. It's one of those games, isn't it, that it will very much depend on which Dundee team turn up and which Ross County team turn up. Because on their game, on the day, both sides are capable of winning this game without any doubt. Ross County have been on a little bit of an upsurge of late. Dundee, as you say, have been sliding downwards with some bad results of late as well. So, to me, yeah, I reckon it will be 1-1 draw. I don't see it being a great number of goals in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny, Graham, because only 2 or 3 weeks ago, Dundee got a 3-3 draw against Celtic. They drew 1-1 against Rangers, so they're capable of pulling out very good scores.
Yeah, this is why I love football. You get results like that, and then you get hammered 6-0 2 weeks in a row. It's just the joy of football at times. Maybe not for Dundee fans, but yeah, but they are capable of pulling out results. But you just, like James said, you don't know what you're going to get them. They've got a guy in Simon Murray, ex-Ross County player, of course, who could cause Ross County problems. He'll be up for this. I mean, I always think Simon Murray looks like the angriest man in football. Does that guy ever smile? But I think it's difficult to predict. I would probably just go for Dundee to win it because Ross Kent is such a strange team. And again, I do think Ross Kent will end up in that playoff again, but probably stay up with the skin of the team again. But they can't keep doing that every full season. I like Don Kirby. I think he's a decent guy, decent manager. But again, it's just that lack of quality they've got. You know, Ronan Hale, if he doesn't score, you can't really see where the goals are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like Dundee, though, Graham, they've not got a very good away record, and Ross County are always pretty well, always a very good team at home.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I've watched this kind of a few times recently, and they're not. You know, James mentioned Aberdeen. They've been, it's been quite a physical side. Dundee can be as well. They do have a lot of big players in their team, but I just think that they're such a strange team this season. They're very up and down, and like I said, their form recently has been so poor. They have started to slide down that league. They need to start picking up wins. Last week was a game they probably looked at against Aberdeen and thought, right, we can win this game. They get beat. I think it's a big game for them tomorrow, as it is for Ross County.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Ross County, they can take some heart because they're managing to go away to some difficult places and play pretty well.
I think a couple of times I've seen Ross County this season. I've been quite impressed by them, you know, in terms of the way that they're playing. But it does seem to be, as Graham said, if the boy Hale isn't there to score goals, where are the goals going to come from? Previously, when Simon Murray was there, you know, you could usually bank on him to get you a goal or two. And that big fella, White, you know, he was another player that you could kind of bank on to get goals, you know. But even he's been kind of off the boil a wee bit this season. So it is very much a case of, well, if Hale's not there to score, who's going to do it?
Brain Hale score.
I see what you've done there. That's nearly as good as the Wimmer takes it all.
I can see all the journalists are watching this show tonight, James, and thinking of the headlines for tomorrow.
Well, I was going to say, if Hale don't score, Pace might.
As long as they credit you guys with these things, you know, then you can't complain about it.
I mean, in terms of this match, Graham, have you got a score prediction?
I'm going to go 1-0 Dundee.
In terms of you, James, what are you thinking?
I'm going to risk a skelf and go on the fence, 1-1. I'm
going to go 2-1 to Ross County.
Ooh.
Yep. The next matches I'm going to move on to is the matches in the Championship. If you can just spare me a second, then I'll get these up for you guys so you can see them. There we go. The match is on at 7:45 tonight. Morton versus Falkirk, Ayr versus Livingston, Dunfermline versus Queen's Park, Partick Thistle versus Airdrie, and Raith Rovers versus Hamilton. Have you guys got a standout tie there?
Ayr and Livingston for me.
Yep. Graham, what about you?
That was where I was going. I'll go Raith against Hamilton.
Is that some sort of joke, Graham?
Just a bit different.
It's just because Hamilton are near the bottom of the league.
It's just that I stole his thunder by going here in Livingston, and he was, you know, did you not see his nose kind of went?
I didn't want to copy James and go for the obvious one near Livingston, so I'm just picking something different.
I'm just going to ask you, the guys, then, have you, how impressed, James, have you been with Falkirk this season then?
Do you know what? For the last few years, I've thought Falkirk have been impressive, and they've carried it on this year. They've faltered a wee bit a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, but they'll certainly be there or thereabouts at the end of the season. I think, for me personally, the choice will be between Falkirk and Ayr for who goes up into the Premier League.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of Graham, I mean, they played well against your local rivals 2 weekends ago. They played really well.
Not well enough though, because they got beat. Yeah, I think. Sorry, Ayr, no disrespect, but I think Ayr have had a very good season. I think Scott Brown's done very well. They've got some really good players in the team as well. I think George Oakley up front looks a real handful. If they were to come up, I think it would be fantastic, which is why I like the league extended. But if they don't come up, obviously promotion first time, I think it'll be Falkirk. They will definitely win that playoff, and if they were to finish in that playoff place, whoever finishes second up with the Premier League, I don't think I'll fancy playing at United because they're a good side. But I think just in terms of Falkirk, I think what might get them over the line is the signing of Scott Arfield. He's got 4 goals in his first 2 games back at Falkirk. I think for that league, I think that's a great signing, and I think that could be the signing that takes Falkirk to title.
Yeah, that's a big statement, but that's probably going to be true. I just want to ask you, James, I've been watching Scott Brown for many years. How impressed have you been that he settled into Ayr?
Listen, I was quite impressed when he was at Fleetwood. When he started off there, I thought he was really good, and he's just kind of carried that on, in my opinion, at Ayr. But he's really settled in at Ayr, and listen, I wouldn't be surprised if he was moving on at the end of the season because somebody came in and offered him more than what Ayr can offer him. But equally, I wouldn't be surprised if Ayr were to go up to the Premier League that he would stay with them.
Are you surprised he didn't get the Motherwell job?
No.
Probably not, Graham, just because maybe the fact that Joe Kettlewell got, and also the fact that I don't know if you agree, James, but he seems to be getting really backed by Ayr. Like, see, over the past few seasons, it seems to be really as if they're spending a lot of money now.
Yeah, he's getting the backing for the club, and that's why I'm saying, if they go up to the Premier League, he would hang about for another season, in my opinion. But if they weren't going to go up and somebody, not necessarily in the Championship, but if somebody offered them a good package to move onwards, then he would move on, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about Queen's Park, Graham. I mean, for Queen's Park to be near the bottom of the Championship and to beat Rangers, it's great for them, but they'll just want to get back to winning ways after getting beat last week at home to John Rankin's Hamilton Accies.
Yeah, you often find that after a big win that you kind of falter a little bit. They'd have been bouncing off the ceiling after that win against Rangers. So it's maybe no surprise they got a come down last week, but they will be looking to try and climb the table. I mean, they've got a quarter final to look forward to in a couple of weeks, which will be massive for them. But the main thing for them is staying up. And, they got an Dunfermline team that I think have looked better under Michael Tidser. They went to Aberdeen in the Cup. They were okay, had a few chances in that game.
Yeah, a few chances.
Yeah, but Queen's Park were just looking to try and climb that table. But, I mean, is it going to get any better for them than going to Ibrox and winning? Probably not.
I was just going to ask you, James, about probably the big story this week in the Championship is the fact that Brian Graham has taken over because Chris Doolan is being sacked. For anyone that doesn't know, Chris Doolan was a former player, Partick Thistle, but he's now being sacked by Partick Thistle.
Yeah, I was surprised when I seen that the other day, that he got the boot. Brian Graham, not really that surprised. He's got some management experience because he manages the Partick Thistle's women's team, and they've been doing pretty good in the SWPL. But I know it's a different kettle of fish from managing a men's team to managing a women's team, and the way that you have to deal with people. But I think It will definitely only be a game or two that he might be in charge at Thistle. I do think that
Is
somebody.
that you got some sources telling you, James?
Well, I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I've been looking at the runes and casting the bones, and no, I don't know who would get it, but I think for me personally, if he was up for the job, I think Neil Lennon would be a good manager choice for Partick Thistle.
Could you really see Neil Lennon managing in the Championship though?
Yes, but it would need to be right for him. You know what I mean? I know Alistair said earlier about the financial aspect of it, but let's be honest. Sometimes you've got to take a step or two backwards to move forwards again. And he's had a couple of hard knocks with some of the jobs that he had, Neil Lennon. So maybe it would be a good idea to take that step back to the Championship. And you never know, he might take them back up to the Premier League in the first season that he's with, whoever that team was in the Championship.
I could see potentially Stephen Naismith for that Partick job.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or Stuart Kettlewell.
What about somebody that's in the Championship at the moment? Anybody that stands out? Maybe Dougie Emery, something like that, Graham?
Yeah, possibly, but they might want to go a different route, maybe a bit more experience. But it just kind of goes to show about football though, and like different chairmen have different ideas. Because you look at Partick Thistle, who've just sacked Chris Doolan, but they're playing against an Airdrie side that Rhys McCabe's been under a lot of pressure this season, yet he's still on the job. So it just goes to show that, some chairmen won't bite the bullet when you're having a poor season. And Airdrie have had a terrible season this season, but they're sticking with Rhys McCabe. Just go to show that different chairmen think different things.
Yeah, I mean, Graham, I'm just going to ask you, on that Partick Thistle Airdrie game, I don't understand why, but people are telling me there's a bit of rivalry there with that game.
First I've heard of that.
Do you know about that game?
No, what about that at all?
I think it goes back to a couple of 100 years of what the two clubs. I don't know, but I just know there's some sort of rivalry there. But anyway, guys, Michael sat down this week with a broadcast journalist to speak about the big match that this weekend between Scotland and England. So I'm going to play a bit of that at the moment. So and then we can go. But I can talk a bit about the rugby.
Okay, so in the locker room, we built up to the Six Nations a few weeks ago, and we spoke to freelance journalist Peter Newman, and I'm delighted to say Peter has joined us today to speak about the Six Nations so far, but also to kind of like build up to the big game this weekend against, well, the old enemy, you would say, England at Twickenham. So, Peter, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
I just wanted to, obviously, we spoke in the build-up. I think we spoke on the eve of the Italy game a few weeks ago, and we won that game 31-19. But there was parts in that game where it was Italy was leading the game. But before we go on to maybe speaking about Scotland and the progress, just speak to me about Italy, because like Italy used to be like the, am I right in saying like the whipping boys of rugby, but now over the years they've actually picked up, and well, obviously they gave Scotland a game a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, when I was a kid, Italy were exactly that. They were whipping boys. But I think we forget that it's now 30 years this year since professionalization. And what's happened is Italy are, that they've put in place a system. You've got their teams competing in the championship. So in actual fact, they've actually now had quite a long time to really sort of come through and make themselves challenging. And they are absolutely no pushover. I mean, we haven't mentioned them, but Wales are now below Georgia in the rankings. And there used to be this kind of cliche. You get it in international football as well. There's no easy games. There really are no easy games now. And that Italy team has got some absolutely outstanding players. We spoke. We were saying we thought they were going to give Scotland a scare at times and that they would compete, and then they absolutely did. And obviously they then went out and beat Wales the following week. So I mean, kudos to Italy. They're a serious team. And they should be always now looking at kind of quarterfinals in every World Cup. So they really are a serious team.
Yeah, no, I mean you see it, and you mentioned football there, but you think of like Celtic playing Bayern Munich this week, and I think Celtic were only like a few seconds to take Bayern Munich to extra time. So basically, what I'm saying is it doesn't matter what level you're at, but if you're in that particular competition, you're actually there for a reason. Like you're not there to kind of like make up the numbers.
That's absolutely true. And I mean, if you look at the relative size of, Bayern Munich, Celtic's great. Germany's a huge country. Scotland is a small country. There's a population size thing there. And yet you can really push them hard. And it's the same, Italy is a bigger country than Scotland, but it has a smaller playing base because obviously the culture is different. But the quality of players they are turning out now, there's a lot of them sprinkled across the sort of European leagues. So, yeah, no, absolutely to be respected.
And so let's go on now to speak about our beloved Scotland. They won the first game 31-19, and this was a very even though you would maybe say that, it was a big gap in terms of the score, but when you actually see the game, especially in that first half, it was very kind of nip and tuck, and in places of the game, and also that Scotland were getting beat at one point in the game.
They were, and Italy made every chance count. I think it was you actually saw it a little bit with the England-France game the following week, that actually Scotland were a bit over elaborate in that first half. They were trying lots of different things, and they were actually trying to force the game, whereas sometimes you just need to retain the ball and just do the basics really well. And I thought that was actually what they did so well in the second half, was they were actually very patient. They didn't try and force the issue, and they just went, no, we're actually, we understand our processes. We've got good players. It will come. And that's exactly what they did. And eventually they just rolled through Italy. But yeah, no, they pushed them very close. They were behind on the scoreboard, and they had to work very hard to win, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think actually, I said to you when I was on last time, I feel Scotland are actually always better when they've had a scare. You don't want them to sort of get ahead of themselves. You want them to feel like they're underdogs and they have to keep working, because that's how you get a best tune out of a Scotland team.
And then I suppose that you went in, well, obviously when we were doing the preview, we were quietly confident about maybe winning the Six Nations. It's not going to be this year again. But and then Scotland went into the second game against Ireland, and Scotland were up against it. I would say in the last parts of the game, it was 18-32 to Ireland. So, but I mean, I suppose you were always going to be up against it, even if it was at Motherwell got Ireland, because if I'm not mistaken, Ireland got to the semi-final of the World Cup? Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, it was. And they also, I think it's 11 times on the spin they've lost to Ireland now. This is, I think I said in the preview that with Ireland, you're kind of hoping that you're going to catch them on an off day. And now that they've aged out and they've got, a lot of new boys in there, you're thinking if everything flows in Scotland's direction, then maybe. And of course, what happened was it didn't. In fact, we lost Finn, we lost Darcy Graham, and credit to Townsend for keeping Finn off despite him passing the head injury assessment and saying, no, actually, I don't think he's right. And we don't care what the medic says, he needs to be protected. I think that's an incredibly bold decision from a coach. But what it meant was that we had guys, very young boys coming in ourselves, actually playing out of position. And you had the young fly half for Ireland, Prendergast. It was death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, that guy was absolutely on fire. And because the pack were rolling forward for Ireland, we were always on the back foot. And strangely, that 31-18 slightly flatters us. It was, the Irish team were relentless. It was very impressive, but not very good to watch.
So, and then we go into the big game this weekend, the game that matters to everybody in Scotland. It's funny because people's not kind of like into rugby of the week, they still get involved in this game. I think it's because it's a small matter of our neighbours down the road in England. And but however, I was going to say it's a bit different now because it's down in Twickenham, but I suppose it doesn't matter because if we win this year, it'll be 5 years in a row we win the Calcutta Cup. I mean, how do you think the Moog and the Camp's going into this game? Because obviously 1 win and 1 defeat. I suppose it's funny because that's the same with England as well. 1 win, 1 defeat.
I think the mood in the camp will be absolutely what you just identified. This is the one that matters. And arguably it is make or break because, as you say, the record for both teams is the same. You worry because England came off that last minute win against France that frankly they didn't deserve and they should have been out of sight. France should have been out of sight. And what you're looking at there is if you don't win this Calcutta Cup game, you're suddenly 2 defeats and 1 win. You're really behind the 8 ball, and suddenly the whole tournament, you've still got to play France if you're Scotland. You still got to play Wales, who are wounded and looking for a bounce. And suddenly, from what looked like a potentially really positive Six Nation campaign, becomes really, really difficult. So I think it really is a must win. We haven't lost at Twickenham since 2017, interestingly. Mainly, obviously, because the intermittent years you were at Murrayfield, but we also drew there as well. So our record at Twickenham is very, very strong. And we're going to be looking to knock England off their perch. There's no 2 ways about it, are we? You said it's about the neighbours. It's about silencing the noisy neighbours. There isn't really any, there isn't any other way of looking at it. I suspect the mood in the camp is going to be absolutely fired up for it and putting them back in their box. Now, it's just a case of can we actually do it?
Yeah, I mean, that was Peter Newman there talking to Michael yesterday. What do you guys think about this match tomorrow then?
I have to put my hand up and say that for a lot of years now, I haven't really watched much of the Six Nations. I used to be a devotee, but for quite a number of years now, I haven't really bothered much with it. Although I do think that it will be a Scotland win at Twickenham because we do seem to have a bit of an Indian sign over England at the moment. But equally, as Michael said, it's 1 win, 1 loss for both teams, so it could sort of swing anyway. But my heart overrules my head when it comes to Scotland-England games.
What about you? Are you much a rugby person?
I don't mind it when Scotland are, but I always hate when someone says that a team's not lost something for ages because it just feels like it's a jinx. And I hope Peter's not just jinxed it there by saying Scotland haven't lost in Twickenham since 2017 because that's just going to come back to bite us. But I reckon against England has actually been far, far better. And I think Michael's right. This is the game that matters. Even if you're not a massive rugby fan, I would honestly, I don't like tiddlywinks, but if Scotland played England, I'd watch it because it's against England. I just watched Scotland win. Against Ireland, they were quite poor, but Ireland are one of the best in the world, so it was always going to be difficult. But if Scotland can go on the win tomorrow, that would be massive. And I actually fancy them to do it as well. I know it's not a biased opinion. I actually do fancy them to do it.
Yeah, I mean, finally, that's just 7 o'clock, so all that's left me to do is thank Graham, thank James for the last 2 hours, and hopefully Scotland can win, and we'll see you again on Sunday.
Yeah, hopefully they'll win, and it's been great to hear with you guys.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, James. See you
Come on,
guys
Hawk.
soon.
Cheery!